All right. I love getting the chance to do these post-marathon recaps and reflections with the one and only Clayton Young. We've got a nice little string going of audio diaries of sorts, post Chicago last fall, post trials, and now we get to kind of recap a fantastic performance at the Olympic marathon, a ninth place finish in 2:08. Clayton Young, congratulations. How's the body feeling after what was billed as the most torturous, toughest marathon course ever? But then all of you pros made it look like it was not that bad because there was an Olympic record set by Tamara Tola up in the front of the race. You ran within a minute of your personal best. So it couldn't have been that bad. I experienced it for myself, and I could say it was challenging, but you guys, I guess this is just like all of the training paying off.
Yeah, it's been interesting to kind of reflect on these last couple of days and then kind of take it back the last 16 weeks and really break down like how this was possible. And then also, ever the athlete, you're always looking at like, what could I have done here? What could I have done there? And yeah, so there's a lot of mixed emotions, but I've been telling people that like 90% of my feelings are like, wow, that was incredible. That was amazing. I did better than I ever thought I could, especially given my history. And but yeah, there's also, the ever unsatisfied athlete that wants more. Especially when you have somebody like Connor Mance as a teammate, like he is so driven, he's so hungry, and so we kind of share that hunger together. And so yeah, but I think I walk away with it very happy, very happy. And that's kind of what you got to do, especially with all the people that were out there to support me and the time that I get to spend with them. It's like nobody wants a grumpy Clayton Young after a race, and so. But it's genuine, it's real. I'm really happy, and especially kind of like you said, that course was so tough. Tola ran so fast, and so to run as fast as I did, and to kind of do some interpolation of maybe how fast I could go on other courses gets me excited. And not only for in 4 years in LA, but obviously, these next 1, 2, 3 years. That's I guess one of the beauties about being a marathoner is the Olympics are big, obviously for track and field and for marathoning, but I feel like with the world major marathons, like we kind of get to celebrate our fitness twice a year, and on a really high performing, like a high stage, a big stage, and that's pretty cool.
So when we look at these results on paper, what was it that kind of led to this ended up being such a fast race? Like initially, I guess like every in the lead up to it, your coach Ed Eyestone had told, I believe it was Let's Run, that like a time like 2:08 would be something that could potentially medal. And I think you guys also shared that with us when we were in Eugene as kind of like, oh yeah, with this thing being so tough, like that's what it's going to take. And then, on the day, the Olympic record goes down and everyone runs pretty fast.
Yeah, I think going into it, Connor had done his research, and you look at the past, what, two, three Olympics, they've all been won in 208, and so we thought 208 would be on the podium, and so to hit that goal was pretty cool, but then also to not be on the podium kind of was like, dang it, like a little bit of a letdown. But yeah, I think ultimately, I don't know, I think why was it so fast? We kept it pretty honest in the beginning, but I think the real test, and as you ran it from essentially the top of the first hill to the bottom of the second hill, before you make the last final climb of the wall, you can just really roll on that. And it got to the point to where we were running so fast that I stopped looking at my watch because I was like so nervous. After a half marathon, I was rolling in the 4:30s for quite a while, and I was like, okay, I got to stop looking at my watch, and I just got to keep on to this train that's catching the chase or the lead pack. And I think that's what made it so fast. I think we also talked about, I don't know, people have maybe heard me talk about this, that we painted this picture, like this daunting picture, so clearly in our mind back in April when I went and came and trained on the course. Thanks to ASICS, I trained on it for 5 days straight. I wasn't in any sort of real shape, and so it was daunting. Like it was like, man, these hills are brutal. And I went back and I told Coach Eystone and Connor Mance all about how bad these hills were and that we needed to be ready for them. And the men in the media, it seemed like the hills got bigger and bigger every day, it seemed. And so we prepared, like we were so prepared for those hills, both in workouts and in our training runs. And so I think it really kind of opened our eyes when a week out from the race, we went and ran those middle miles of the course as our last kind of Saturday long run. We just did 13 miles. And it was like, wait a second, these aren't too bad. And we could maybe go, we could roll on these. And we did. And so that was pretty cool. Uh, yeah, I part of me kind of has these feelings of like, man, this was my shot, this was my chance as an American athlete. Like the tougher the course, the worse the weather, the better. And as a side note, I wish the weather was worse, to be honest. But like this was my chance. And so in LA, we have no idea what the course is going to be like yet. But there's a good chance it'll be flat if it's going to be based off of, the 2016 trials. But it could be very hilly because the LA Marathon by A6 is a very hilly course. So anyway, part of me is like, dang it, that was my chance. And part of me is like, it's okay. Maybe LA will be hilly and iconic, just like Paris was, and go through the hills of, LA.
Yeah. So let's take this back to, your training for this race. It's, a lot of, what is it, 16 weeks of it, all chronicled on your YouTube channel. I've gone and watched, a bunch of the episodes and very beautifully, put together. What really stands out to you from this build? And I know a lot of it was captured, but like it wasn't just sort of like, oh, this is the best buildup you've ever had. There are some of those, waves that you've gone through with emotions all throughout.
Yeah, I definitely agree that this was a great build. Like they gave me a lot of confidence to be ready to race, but as everybody saw, like it wasn't perfect, especially the beginning. Like I came off the Olympic trials with this high, thinking that I'd be able to kind of come in with this fitness and be able to kind of train with Connor, stride for stride. But I just got absolutely worked the first 4 weeks, it seemed. And then I played catch up for the next 4 weeks. And then towards the end, I started to close the gap and had some good workouts. We were trading off and I was hanging on for dear life. But even like the week or two in San Moritz going into the marathon, like I got worked in a couple of workouts in it. And that's a testament to just how fit Connor Mance was, to be honest. Like he's an animal and but it's also a testament to just like, yeah, I guess that every build isn't perfect. Now, granted, I would say like 75% of my workouts, I was hitting workout bests, right? Like I was running faster than ever. And you really can't compare this build to all my previous builds because this was a hilly build, right? Like I was training on these hills to get ready for the Paris course. And while they were workouts that I've ran before, like this classic Hobble Creek 8 mile tempo, where we run up this canyon more or less, like I've done that workout all through college, but it's just different when it's a marathon build. And so in some ways I could compare back to previous builds, in some ways I couldn't, but overall I think I felt like I was just as fit or fitter than the trials, and that gave me some confidence going in. But you're right, like I definitely still had some high hamstring pain, I had some glute pain in there, I had some Achilles pain in there. When I got to San Moritz, those episodes haven't been released yet and they will soon, but like I accidentally in San Moritz, I decided to sleep at even higher altitude because I sleep at high altitude at home. And, San Moritz is at like 6,000 feet, but I wanted to sleep at my normal 10,000 feet. And I wasn't used to the system. And so I'm sleeping there and I'm with my wife. And I have this thing that tracks the altitude throughout the entire night. And I wake up next morning and I realized that I'd been sleeping at like 11,500 feet. And I was like, dang it. And I woke up feeling trashed too. And, this is post Olympic ceremonies, this is post travel, this is post everything. And I'm like, wow, I'm just like putting myself deeper into this hole. And, we run our last big threshold session. It's 2x4 mile and we go out and do it. And I just get, it's an okay session, but I get kind of worked, to be honest. I'm just tired. I'm fatigued. And I'm like, dang it, did I blow it? So just like little things like that just aren't quite perfect. And then that Thursday, we do our last anaerobic session down in Chiavenna Italy. It's like an hour drive from San Moritz. And because our group is so big, we decided to take the public bus. And on the way down from the public bus, as some people saw on Strava, like I was trying to buy tickets for the first 20 minutes. We'd gotten on the bus, hadn't bought our tickets yet. I'm trying to buy the tickets. The dumb machine's not working. We're going down. I finally give up, and I'm just so motion sick, like just terrible. And so I'm spending the rest of the hour, 15-minute drive just like deep breathing. And with 15 minutes to go, I just lose it. And I'm like, dang it, like this is our last anaerobic session. I'm now like depleted. And motion sickness is different than the actual sickness. So I was like, I'll be okay. I just chugged some electrolytes and some gummies and got to the track and just took it one interval at a time. But yeah, just like things aren't always perfect, right? And even travel's like, man, this yeah. Anyway. But yeah, so to put it together, going into the race, there were definitely some confidence issues. Personally, just like trying to feel like what is it that I could really do. This is such a different race because it's championship style racing. There's a lot of good people in the field. Those hills put in another factor. Are people going to take off? And so that was kind of what my emotions were like going into the race.
Yeah. Was there a race plan that Coach Eystone drew up for both you and Connor? I know that the buildup was a little bit different because Connor was spending more time in Park City, but you guys would meet up a couple days a week for actual workouts. But then for actual race day, same plan or different plans?
Yeah, so for the first time Coach has ever done this, we actually met separately with Coach, and I wasn't sure if um, Connor and I chatted later, and it sounds like we got the same race plan from what I could tell. It was kind of this, as Coach says, this jive, meaning chill the first, third, and then survive through the hills, and then thrive over the last third. And anyway, we kind of had a governor through that first 10K of 448 to 450. That was kind of what Coach had kind of told us, and luckily that's what the pack did. But then through the hills, it was all about survive. And if anybody's watched the docuseries, they know that Connor is incredibly good at hills. And so, even our last hill workout in Utah before we left, I kind of was talking to him and I was like, you know what? Like, you're putting 50 seconds on me by the end of this workout. And I just had the best hill workout of my life. And, I would say I'm not great at hills, but I'm not terrible at hills either. So if you can put 50 seconds on the pack at the Olympics, like, is that something that you take advantage of? And so I was wondering if Connor would take advantage of the hills. And, he ultimately, like, after we had talked with Coach Eystone and with each other, he was kind of more just going to be as efficient as he could up the hills and then take advantage of the downhills, which he did when he covered the move with Tola. But yeah, I by and large, we had the same race plan, more or less. And I think Coach kind of gave him a little bit more of a green light on that first 10K, but Connor decided to be more patient, which is not typical of Connor. And so we found ourselves together for most of the race.
Yeah, so this is where it gets interesting because Tola makes the move around like 20K. Mance goes with it. Obviously, now that's the point where like the lead cameras start following that. What's happening in that backpack that you're in?
Yeah, I would say just before the crest of that hill is when I think, 20 to 25 guys separate. And we're flying before the last, I guess, climb to 20K, you could say. And as we crest that hill, like you said, Tola makes the move, Connor covers it, and I get to the top of that hill and we start going down the downhill, and I'm like, I'm redlining. Like I am absolutely redlining. And I'm thinking, well, like this is it. Like Connor and Tola are gonna go get their medals. I'm gonna hang on for dear life. And I I started to settle. Like I was like, well, I think top 20 is gonna be it. Like this is like I am at my wit's end. And you see Connor and Tola kind of pull away, and you see as eventually like 3 or 4 or 5 guys, kind of follow him, and they kind of fade a little bit. And there's 2 packs that are kind of formed from what I remember. I haven't gone and watched the broadcast, but there's this pack of maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 with Connor, and then I'm in this chase back of probably 7 to 8. And luckily, as we kind of go by Versailles and we round the corner, one of the guys from my pack just starts closing on Connor's pack, and it pulls all the rest of us, and we get to close that gap. And that was like a big sigh of relief because like I was like, wow, like I was redlining all the way down that hill and even covering that move, and I started to feel pretty good down the hill. I think I ran a faster 5K than Connor, obviously closing on him, but it was still just like I was at my limit. But I knew that I was like the last guy that covered the move to get to this pack, and just from all road racing, like it's like road racing number one, like 101. Like if you fall off, you're gone, you're dead, you're done. And you can usually be a little bit more patient in a marathon, but I just knew that I had to stick with that pack, and obviously it paid off. Because by then it was maybe there were maybe 15 of us. Um, uh, but
And then
yeah, it
that's when
was
you guys did the high five too,
the
when
high
you guys
five. Yeah,
reconnected, right?
yeah, and that was kind of surprising because I found Connor at the back of that pack, right? And he had surged so well with Tola. I thought that he would kind of be dictating this pace, but Connor was at the very back of that pack, and there was maybe this pack was maybe 3-4 seconds long, right? It was kind of a strung out pack, and I was on the tail of like I barely caught the tail of an end of it before the last hill. And yeah, Connor, as he puts it in on social media, like he turns around and he's kind of like, "Dang it, another guy caught the pack." He'd done all this work to break the pack with Tola. Another guy latches on, but then he sees who it is, and he's excited. And we haven't practiced any high fives since Orlando, but man, I guess we nailed it that time. And I'm so glad that they caught it on the broadcast. Like that was just a really cool moment once again, where I had somebody to work with. But like it didn't last long. Like we got together, we got in this pack, and then we entered kind of the last big downhill before the big uphill. Um, and I remember, during this time, like Connor and I are trying to share ice, we're trying to share bottles, we're grabbing waters and sharing it. And there's one water station right before the big uphill, and I kind of didn't execute that one very well. Like I was fumbling with my ice because the ice bags they would give you were just so big, and I'd break them, so I'd have to break them in half and then hold them in my left hand, because I just knew that if you heard me on the women's broadcast, I talk about how the blood pumps from your heart to your left hand, back to your heart, and then out to the rest of your body. And so I'm trying to keep this ice on my left hand. I'm trying to get this water down. I'm like as nauseous as ever because I've been downing all this fluid. And then we hit the hills, and that's when, as most viewers saw, that's when it broke apart. But what was weird to me is I had no idea that it had broken apart. Like we go into the hill, and all I'm thinking is just keep contact with the guy in front of me and keep my head down because I don't want to be daunted by this hill. Like you look at this hill and you remember, Chris, like it looks massive.
It's crazy.
And
Like
so,
you could stick your arms up in front of you and touch the ground, and
yes,
it was that bad.
yeah, yeah, it was kind of, and so just to like deal with it psychologically, I decided to keep my head down and just keep contact with the guy in front of me and just drive, 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 drive. But little did I know that by the top of the hill, there was only like three of us, and everyone else had kind of just like it just been blown apart. And I was like, dang it. Um, and I should say there was this really cool moment going up this hill where there was a kid, probably a 10-year-old kid, that was paralleling me. And you're running by all these people, and it's deafening, and you're just trying to concentrate. But you can see out of the peripherals, like there's this kid that's been paralleling me for a while, and I'm like, wow, this kid is flying. And so partway through, I look over to him and he's looking at me, and we just have like this grin, like we're just like grinning at each other. And it was just this really cool moment. Um, and it was definitely very motivating.
Because
But
that's what
once
they
again,
said
all I'm doing,
about that hill
go
is
ahead.
that like you guys are the best marathoners in the world, but for that, 900 meters or whatever it was, K, everyone looks the most human possible. And like even looking at your Strava afterwards, when I kind of like scrubbed over that part of the hill just to see just like how much you slowed down. It was that afternoon, like after your race, before my race,
Yeah,
I was like, all right, what did Clayton get? Like how slow did he go up the hill? And for just like that, for a moment, your pace starts slipping into the 740s, or I think it was. And I was
yeah,
like, did
yeah.
you notice that in the like? I know you said you stopped looking at your watch, but just
Mhm.
in that moment to get a glare of like, what is this doing to me?
No, I did not, I decided not to look at my watch. And
Good
so
idea.
it was definitely shocking afterwards when I was going back and looking at the data. And specifically, I was looking at like my power data because I was wearing some stride pods and I was looking at my pacing of what they predicted. And then I was looking at, the pace I actually ran. And yeah, I ran slow up that hill. And it was like, wow, dang it. Like,
But
I
that was
thought I was doing
everyone.
so good. I know. I thought I was doing so good though, like keeping contact with my little pack. And I was like, I wonder if I would have kept my eyes up and saw some of the moves made, if it would have made a difference. Um, that's another what if, right? But like, who knows? Maybe I would have gotten on the other side and I would have totally blown up. And you when you look back at the entire race, and we haven't even told the whole story yet, but when you look at the back of the entire race, like there's definitely these moments of like, man, I could have done that, could have done that, could have done that. But then there's also so many moments where it's like, oh my gosh, like I lucked out. Like I lucked out that I was part of the chase group that eventually caught Connor's group, and I lucked out that I was the last guy that decided to make that move. Like I ran a very efficient, first 30K of that race, 25K of that race. Um, and so while you look back and you see maybe some things you change, by and large, I've looked back and been like, wow, I made some great decisions. I was definitely guided in some of these moments. And that was kind of like my prayer, honestly, going into the race. Like I was just like, please help me to make good choices. Because this course, you can just make so many wrong choices and pay for it.
Yeah, because I guess the biggest difference I think comparing this race to the Olympic trials is that at the trials on paper, you and Connor were like the top dogs
Hmm.
that everyone was probably like queuing off of. And in a race like this, if you even sorted it by personal best, descending order, whatever it is, you guys are no longer in control. It felt like you guys
Yep.
have to respond and cover everyone else's moves. And some of these guys, you all you probably know about them is the PR that's on paper. Like there's very
Yeah.
little intel and data compared to an Olympic trials field.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Like even when I sat down with Coach Iceland, I was like, you know, at the Olympic trials, we kind of had our hit list, right? We had these guys were the moves we were going to cover. But at the trials, it was like, well, yeah, I know Elliot and I know Bekele, but there's some guys like I had like, and I know Tola, like, but you're right. I have no idea how they race or they train, especially on a hilly course. And so you're spot on. Like it kind of became this idea that, you know, instead of doing any research, it's almost like do no research
Yeah.
because you don't want to be daunted by it. You don't want to be overwhelmed by it. It's just too much. And so, and you're right, like it was definitely this, I've been telling people, we're ranked 60 something, but, top 20 would be a good day. Top 10 would be a great day. But, there was definitely a lot of doubt going in. Like I said, at 20K, as we were coming down that first hill, I was like, well, I guess it's a top 20 sort of day. Like this is about it. But it surprised me how well I could recover and respond and kind of put myself in contention again.
So as we kind of were telling the story of the race, we get
Yeah.
up to the top of the hill. Then
Yeah.
looking at the splits and all that stuff, I think that's the next impressive point that everyone kind of glares at and what just kind of on the cursory look through all
Yeah.
of the mile splits is just how fast that next mile is. And it is because it's like you're just rolling down the hill and you have to kind of
Yeah.
force yourself to hit the brakes or else, that's when your quads will get shot. How did you approach that one?
Yeah, I learned a hard lesson last year running Big Seven. And those that don't know the Big Seven course, there's like this half-mile hill that's very big at the beginning and at the end. It's an out and back course. And on the way back, you run down it. And Bia Sambasa was like 5, 10 seconds ahead of me. We hit the hill, and I just start rolling down this hill. And I catch him, and I'm moving so fast that I can't even stop, and I blow right by him. And then there's a quarter mile flat right at the end. And we hit that quarter mile flat, and I have nothing. Like I am just a dead man. And so from that, I learned like physiologically, if you start rolling down these hills, you will pay the price. If you haven't trained, and in fact, I went back and looked at my pace down that Big Seven, and I think I ran like 325-mile pace down that hill. And physiologically, like my body cannot handle that. Even though cardiovascularly, like you can roll, your body just cannot handle that amount of pounding and this like the length of stride and those I don't know tendons and muscles were just fried at the end. And so I just knew that in this course, I did do some downhill running and kind of focused on the pounding and getting my legs tempered for that. But I also knew like 420 to 410 was kind of my governor on it. And if you look at our speed work too, like that's where we've done most of our speed work when we were doing like our 800s or even our 1200s. And so I knew that physiologically that's kind of what my limit was. And so going down the hill, I definitely I was when I got to the top of the hill, I should say, I was with like two or three other guys, and I noticed that, I would pass them on the downhills and then they would pass me on the flats because it kind of rolls downhill a little
Hmm.
bit. And so I did notice that I was better down the hills. And in fact, the first half of the course, there was a couple times I actually touched the lead a little bit simply because we were going down into an underpass and then up the other side because I'm a pretty good downhill runner. But then, the name of the game that I've been saying ever since I saw the course back in April with ASICS was the person that gets to the bottom of the hill and still has their legs is going to be the one that can contend. And so to roll 420 down that hill and to still have my legs, I was like, sweet, it's go time. Like, this is it. This is what I prepared for. I think I'm somewhere near the top 10. Let's find the people. Like, where are they? Like, this is it. Especially with all my heat and humidity training, like, I was just waiting for people to suffer over that last 10K. But sadly, like, I caught one guy, right? Like I beat the guy I was with and I caught one guy and then I almost closed on Mance and that was it, right? Um, but I guess I should say there was a really cool moment. The guy that took 11th, and I can't remember his last name starts with a G. Um, uh, but it was really cool running with him because he would lead and then I would lead. And then one of the times I took the lead, I started like pumping up the crowd and it was really exciting. This was maybe like 8K to go, 7K to go.
This is
And the
Elroy
crowd,
Gallant from South
yeah,
Africa.
thank you. Yeah, Gallant. I stood at the back of his bib for a long time as we traded off. Anyway, Gallant and I were working a ton together as we were kind of closing on Mance for a little bit. And so I would get to the lead and I would raise my hands and the crowd would go wild. And then he would take the lead. And then I would go to lead and I'd pump the crowd and go wild. And then towards the end, like when he would take the lead, he would pump up the crowd and he'd turn around and give me the biggest smile. And it was so cool. Like him and I were just having so much fun working together. By about 6K, I think we got it within like 5 seconds of Mance. And I was kind of actually worried for Mance because typically when I catch Mance at the end of a race in the marathon, both in Chicago as well as the trials, right? Like usually that's when he starts going backwards. And so I was like, okay, how am I going to approach this? But then I only got that close, and my legs started feeling a little heavy, and so he took off. But then with about 4K to go, as we make the turn around the Eiffel Tower, I was like, this is it. 4K to go, 2 miles to go. Like, it's go time. And so I broke Gallant. Um, is that his name again?
Yeah,
Gallant.
yeah.
Yeah. And I started pulling towards Mance, and Mance passed one guy, I passed one guy. But then I quickly realized, like, there's no way. Like, Mance has 30, 40 seconds on me. And with about 1,000 meters to go is when I like finally conceded. I was like, well, no one's catching me. I'm not catching Mance. I don't see anybody in front of Mance. And so that's when I really started to just like enjoy it, kind of like I did at the Olympic trials. Um, and then especially with maybe about, I don't know, 300 meters to go. That's when I really started to enjoy it. And yeah, that was the moment. So I got to see Connor cross the line, and then I crossed shortly thereafter. And I asked him, first question I asked him was like, "What place did we get?" And he's like, "I think I took eighth, and you took ninth." And I was like, "Yes!" Like to be top 10, like would have been like I knew that I didn't have a medal, and I knew that we had like I'd kind of already come to terms with that more or less, right? I'd come to terms with the idea that well, it wasn't a medal day, but to be top 10 was our next goal. That was my B plus goal, and so I was really happy about that. And to finish right behind Mance, to like it place wise was pretty cool too. And then I turned around and I wanted to find Gallant, like right. I'd worked so hard with that guy, and I was like, where is he? Like, I wanted him to succeed, and so I turned around and I think one guy beat him, and so he came in 11th, and that was pretty cool. But then shortly thereafter is when we found Coach Eystone, and I didn't know our time. And I was like, what time did we run? And he's like, you ran 2:08. And I was like, we ran 2:08. And I was absolutely stoked. Like, I had no idea. And I was like, well, I could be a little bit happy about this because we knew that 208, our goal was, well, if we could run 208, we could be on the podium. And so once again, I kind of came to terms with the idea that, you know, it was a good day. It was a great day.
There's also a video going that went pretty viral, I think, afterwards of you and Connor being like the only guys just hanging around by the finish line and just like, congratulating as many people as I think. I don't know how long the video goes for, but you guys
Yeah.
congratulated a lot of guys finishing that race. Was that purposeful or was that just sort of like a spur of the moment, like, hey, like we all just went to war and, congratulations on surviving?
Yeah, I think initially it was this idea that I wanted to see how Gallant did. Like this guy that I'd worked with so
Yeah,
much,
I'm
like
looking it
I
up. So
wanted to,
there was Samson Amare from Eritrea who finished behind you, but Elroy Gallant from South Africa finished 11th. Yeah.
11th. Yeah. Yeah, so that's who I was looking for. I was like, El Rey Gallant, that's good to know his full name. He, yeah, I wanted to know how he did because, like I said, we had worked so much through that like first half of the 10K to go mark, and I wish I hope there's a video or a picture or something out there of him turning around and smiling to me after he had pumped up the crowd. It's like as if I taught him a trick. I don't know, maybe not a trick, but it was like I don't know. He saw me pumping up the crowd, and then he returned the favor, and it was just really cool to share that moment. And I think anyway, so that was kind of my initial why I was turning around, and then other athletes were coming in, and if anybody has kind of followed even the Boston 10K, like that's what I did as well. And a lot of these races, I think it's just so special to kind of welcome these athletes in. And um, I know that it can be a little bit controversial. Like maybe people have said that, I celebrated too much, or there's no reason that I should be welcoming these athletes in, and they should have their moment. And but it's what it is, and it's who I am, and that's what I did. And I've found that those moments right after the race are usually my purest moments. And they did get mad at me eventually. They're like, "You're blocking the camera. You got to get out of the way." And so they pulled us aside. But that was okay because then I found Coach Eyestone, and then I immediately found my wife, which was a miracle in and of itself. And then I found all of my siblings and my parents, and I spent so much time with them that I actually missed the NBC interview. I think they did one with Connor and I later, but it was worth it. Like I was so happy to see my people.
Yeah. The video of your wife Ashley just going absolutely wild for you with like 200 meters to go. Like that is
Yeah.
what everyone hopes for. My fiance has a video very similarly of yelling the same exact way of me in the home stretch of the
Uh,
Houston Marathon back in January. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's just like what when you go back and rewatch that, what are you feeling?
uh, yeah, I think people are starting to realize, like, if I have been the example of the diehard runner and racer and been able to inspire people on that regard, like Ashley's been the one that's been the inspiration for the diehard support fan and loved one that's sacrificed so much for their loved one. And oh man, she, like when I think back, even days before the race, her and our good friend of ours, Todd Garner, were just like so thick into the details of planning, where they would go with their bikes and their car drop off and these cardboard signs that had our places and times on it, and like they just put 110% into it. And sometimes I'm an incredibly independent person. Like I hate to depend on people. But Ashley receives a lot of validation, obviously, from supporting me and helping me. And so it's kind of been this dance that we've had to play. Um, and, sometimes I feel guilty for the amount of support that she gives me. But like you see those moments, and it, like you can tell that she loves it just as much as I do. And that's pretty special. And I've also been the witness of a lot of, you know, how do I put this? A lot of couples that where the loved one hasn't been as supportive, and people have had to make decisions to leave the sport because of it, or haven't thrived in the sport because of it, and that's kind of been hard to watch too. And so to be a partner with someone like Ashley that supports me 110% and can be that voice the selfless supporter is really cool, is really really special. And I think people have caught on to the fact that, you know, if you want to follow me, yeah, you can follow my socials, but if you really want to follow me and see the behind the scenes of what it takes to be an elite athlete, you follow Ashley, because she's done an incredible job of documenting what it takes. And um, yeah, it's really special.
The word he kept using afterwards in your interviews with the reporters in the mix zone was just proud. And it's like you were
Yeah,
proud of you and Connor, you were proud of the buildup, you were proud of just like the support that you've gotten from uh a lot of people, just not just Ashley, but the rep community, the Utah community, the
yeah,
BYU community that's like really poured themselves into it. And so, for you, that pride, I guess, like how you were just so overcome with emotion. I could hear it just sort of in the recording when I went back and listened to it of you recounting just like how thankful you are for everyone. What is it that just like led you to be so emotional in that moment? It's like the marathon just breaks you down both physically and
yeah.
emotionally afterward.
Yeah, it's I'm so grateful that we've been able to document and share this journey, because I think people are starting to realize just truly what it does take. And I think that's what it really comes down to is yeah, it's like my job to work really hard and to get really really fit. But there's so many people behind the scenes that are making that process easier. And like you nailed it, like there's the Utah community and the Run Elite program that is just like, you know, just there to make things smoother, to take less stress off, to support my family. Even just like simple things is like rides to and from the airport. And then there's, you know, Todd Garner, who has stepped in and just raised our mentality to a whole nother level of just like, what do we need to compete at the highest level, and give it instill confidence that we can compete on a high level. There's Coach Eystone that's just been so selfless from the very beginning. Um, there's even just I also say like there's kind of this immense amount of pressure. Hold up, it says my internet connection is unstable. Okay. There's also like this immense amount of pressure to just to make do on the promises that you've made, more or less. Like, you know, it is a little daunting to document 12 weeks of this, like to document the entire build. And I don't think anybody has really been able to perform at a high level and to be as open about their training as I have. And, you know, there's this little doubt in my mind, like, what if I didn't perform? Like, what if I totally bombed? And people could say, like, well, you shouldn't have done the docuseries. Or, you know, my entire family is out on this trip the first time, and, you know, maybe there's a little bit of pressure, like this is their first international trip ever. It's not cheap. There's a lot of pressure to maybe like to give them a reason to be out here. And, you know, people I know are probably going to say, like, Clayton, you shouldn't think like that, or Clayton, you should just focus on yourself and perform to your best ability. But there's always just a little bit of pressure. Like, people have sacrificed so much to support me in part of this, whether that be A6, whether that be Andrew, who's the videographer, whether that's Ashley, whether that's my family, whether that's, you know, there's just been so much that has been invested into me. And that can kind of be daunting to, and so I think there was this moment of pride that I, you know, I didn't embarrass the family, as Coach Eystone would say, and that I, I made my country proud. I made my community proud. I made my family proud. And, you know, this is going to be one heck of a story to tell for the rest of my life, and it will be told. And um, yeah, I think that's kind of where that emotion comes from as well. And I should also say, like, going into the race, I always talk about how the first 14 weeks are really physical. And, you know, there's some mental ups and downs, but the last 2 weeks can become very mentally daunting as you start to taper. You know, not only are your endorphins taken away, but then you start thinking about like all the media that's coming out, and you're comparing yourself to others, and you're seeing what all these other things are doing, and you're trying to decide on your race plan, and you're really looking back in your training, and you're trying to decide, you know, how fit am I really? Like, what can I really run on this course? And um, you know, I I have to admit that like that's when I was really digging deep into, you know, my internal thoughts, and then also like my relationship with God, and and trying to just like instill in myself just a deep amount of confidence and faith that I had done everything that I could, and that I was running for something beyond myself, and that I could execute this plan. And without getting into all of like the religious or spiritual side of things, like I just really felt like I had been guided those last 2 weeks as I was kind of really praying for guidance. And kind of like I said earlier, like there were many moments throughout the course and the race that I look back on that I was guided. Like I made some good choices, um, and that's really special to look back on.
Similarly, I guess in those last 2 weeks, you're also at the Olympics, and Team USA
Yeah,
is like crushing it. You were at the
yeah.
stadium. You texted me at one point, being like, "Hey, where are you watching this race from? Want to watch together?" And it's just like we're watching as like everyone on the
Oh
track
gosh.
is just having the time of their life and the performances of their life, including Kenneth Brooks, someone who
Yep.
you've spent a lot of time with. How much of that did you that's the cool part about the schedule was that the marathon comes at the very end. It does suck sometimes when it's like you want to take part and go see all the different things, but you only have so much energy to expend. But you did find the time to go to the track and see, Kenneth compete and
Yep.
some other people compete. So did you feed off of that in the lead up to kind of quell some of those nerves and all that stuff in the lead up to the race?
Absolutely. Like confidence breeds confidence. And so to see Team USA crushing it on the track, like there was definitely a lot of emotions throughout the entire week. Like kind of like you said, I went to the track so Kenneth Brooks has a tradition that he watches the 10,000 meter before his race. At Worlds, he watched the 10,000 meter in person, 2 days out from his race. And so I kept with his tradition, and him and I went to the track and we watched the 10,000 meter. And so to see Grant Fisher, who we've gotten pretty close with because, he's training in Utah, he's part of the Run Elite program. And then we saw him up at San Moritz. We went on a couple runs together. We congratulated him, or we said hi to him before the race. Like, um, to see him. Oh, and then I guess I should say, like, I've raced Grant my whole entire life. Like we were in the NCAA system together, and so I've always really looked up to Grant, a lot of respect for him, and so to see him crush it in the 10K was just so thrilling. And in that stadium, that was our first stadium experience, and the Stade de France is incredible, as you know, and those that weren't there, man, it was just so cool to see him do that and to take that flag and to run around the stadium was super cool. What is hard too is then like 2 days later, the prelims happen, and we see James Corrigan race. And James Corrigan is the standout from BYU that had gone through the NCAA system, didn't do very well, but makes it from the Olympic trials, has to chases the standard, gets it done, and makes the Olympics. And I was his roommate, and throughout this entire couple of weeks, and honestly, he didn't have a good prelim. And Connor and I were watching the prelims together, and we looked at each other and were like, "Dang, like that was really hard to watch." And that's our training. We're like closer to that. Obviously, we don't do a lot of the same things as the steeplers, but we do. We had the same travel plan, the same meals, the same things, and so that was hard to watch. But then to see Kenneth crush it in the prelim and just run a tactical race and to get to the final was really cool. And then I wish I was in the stadium for Kenneth's race, but with it being 2-3 days out from my race, we watched it in the Team USA gathering area at the Olympic Village, and I was absolutely losing it. I think everyone feels a little bit self-conscious at first, or being surrounded by like all these track people that are watching a race, but like 3 laps to go, it was as if there was nobody else in the room, and I didn't care how I looked. Like I was just screaming my head off and screaming at this screen to the point to where more people kept coming over because they just saw that, like, what is this guy freaking out about? So for Kenneth to get silver was so special, so validating, and the way that he did it, the way that it was so gutsy, the fact that he almost took gold, the fact that he held off bronze, like, oh man. And probably the most special moment was like the day later, he's like, Kenneth texts me and he's like, "Hey, I'm busy all day, but I got 5 minutes right now and I'd love to see you before your race. Like, can I come see you?" And I said, so let's meet up. And he came and he let me hold his medal, and holding that silver medal, like I lost it. Like it was just so special. All right. Like I've known Kenneth since he was a freshman at BYU and watched him go through this journey. And yeah, it definitely gave Connor and I like this motivation, like, oh man, like we want a medal, we can do it. And I think that was the little bit of confidence that we needed to kind of be able to mix it up and feel like we could uh, hang in the marathon and do our best to get a medal.
Tell me there's someone got a video of you watching that race.
Oh, I have a video of myself, maybe the last lap, but it's a video of me of the race, and so the audio is terrible. Well, no, the video is terrible, but the audio is priceless. And then at the very end, I turn the camera at me and I say like "freaking silver medalist" like really loud and obnoxiously, and um, I think I put it on my story, but maybe I'll post it actually because it was just yeah, it was awesome.
All right, two more quick things because I know it's getting late out in Europe for you. So one thing you highlighted in your post-race interview was your progression. 229 back in 2020, 216, 2021, 211, 2022, 208 last year. And now again, you run 208 at the Olympics, finish ninth, and you were just like telling the guy back in 2020 that this was how the course of his career was going to be would even surprise you. Now you've had a couple days to, think about where your career has taken you. What does this tell you, or like what would you tell that original sort of Clayton Young lining up for the marathon in Atlanta?
Oh man, I've had this question asked once before, right after the Olympic trials, like what would you tell Clayton of 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago? And I had to think about it for a while, and I kind of came to the conclusion that like I would just give him a big hug and just say, keep doing what you're doing, because I wouldn't want to rob him of all of the experience that he had to gain. Like the only reason that Clayton Young, ninth place finisher Clayton Young 208 on the Paris course exists is because of what I had to go through the last 4 years. Um, and so I wouldn't want to rob him of those opportunities. Like there's no shortcut to this. There really isn't. And, while I wish, that podium would have come sooner, once again, I think there were valuable lessons that I had to learn, um, that are going to continue to pay off for the next decade, whether that's in life or whether that's in sport. And so that's really, I think, like all I could really do is just give Clayton of 2019 when he's suffering, or 2020 in the marathon, a big hug and just say, just it'll all work out. That's all you got to know. And I could say that it honestly has. But honestly, I also like as I've looked back, Todd Garner, he actually sent out a spreadsheet the other day comparing all of the PRs of the top 20 guys and then what they ran on the Paris course, and seeing some of the guys that I was able to beat and their times, and then also saying, okay, if I'm 2 minutes behind Tola on a good day, maybe 3 or 4 minutes behind him on a bad day, depending on relativity, you could say that, okay, well, I think it's time to be a 205, 206 guy, 204 guy. Like there's that kind of belief that's starting to be instilled in me now, and that's really really motivating. Get me on the right course, the right weather, the right day. And now I'm not going to lie that the fact that I've had 3 great marathons in a row is, like, knock on wood, like I know that is very special. Like that is like this doesn't always happen. Um, you know, Consistency is a skill, performing is a skill, winning is a skill. And not saying that I've won, but you could say like I've ran to win. I've competed well, um, but at the same time, like I don't take for granted this chain of marathons that I've had, and so I'm hoping that the next ones line up and continue to line up, and so that I can really be that 204, 205, 206 guy that I want to be. And yeah, and Connor and I, we said it after the trials. We said it after, well, actually, we said it after Chicago on the CITIUS Mag podcast. We said that we are eyeing that American record, um, and whether it's us or whether it's the future generations of American distance running, I think we've instilled some confidence in them and in us. And so, who knows how soon it'll fall, but I think it will fall, and it will fall soon.
All right, last thing. Little birdie tells me, and we can't get into too many specifics. There might be another marathon on the horizon for you. What, I guess, how long is this break going to be in terms of just like before you, I guess, like get back to work, and then what do you hope to get out of your next marathon? You know, if it isn't a fast opportunity, especially given the fact
Yeah,
that like you're coming off of the Olympics, that was grueling. Olympic trials, you've poured so much physically and emotionally into both of those races that does something this fall feel like a celebration of the year?
yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think, okay, what does the break look like? Coach Easton always tells us this first week, like you can run or you cannot run, but you get to the end of the week and either way you're going to feel like garbage. So this week is kind of like, I might run, I might not. Like I'm actually hiking through the Swiss Alps more or less, and I'll count some of that and or not. Like it's just kind of a break. But yeah, this fall we'll see what happens. With there being these world major marathons in the US where you can kind of be celebrated as an Olympian and get to kind of share that moment. Like there are those opportunities, but we'll just have to see how this recovery goes and and see how my body feels. It is really rewarding to see that I have been able to put together a good marathon on hills. Like um, simply the fact that I reached the end of this build and I didn't look at hills the same way that I did before. Like I can train on hills. I can I can hang with the best of them. I think that's also something that's really motivating and also like knowing that I did hang with some of the best of them in a hilly tactical race, like just kind of gives me the confidence that now I get to and I've always raced for time or I've always raced for chase backs, but now I think I kind of have some confidence that I can mix it up with the best of them in a lead pack, and that's going to be really fun. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how my body responds, and we'll see what the little birdie says.
Yeah. Molly was fourth in New York right after Tokyo. So you just never know what happens. And yeah, I'm with you. Like the hill in Paris has changed my total perception of Harlem Hill in Central Park, the Queensboro Bridge. Like I'm not gonna look at those things the same way. Now they look pretty pancake flat to me. So it did
Yeah.
that good for me. Um, Clayton, I appreciate you taking the time to do this while you're on your break. And I think the whole country is proud of you and Connor for the performances that you guys put together on the day. And, we recognize just, how much you guys have put in over the last, I would say months since Orlando to make this happen. So congratulations and enjoy the break.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for sharing the story and thanks for all your research into all this. You know your stuff and you ask the right questions and you pull it out of people, and I really appreciate that.
And I'm willing to put my body on the line to get that firsthand experience on the course too.